It is 2 in the morning, and the air is not moving. The ground is still radiating heat from 12 hours of direct sun. Your body is trying to drop its core temperature to initiate deep sleep, a process that requires your skin to shed heat into the surrounding environment. But the surrounding environment is the same temperature as your skin. The cooling gradient doesn't exist. Sleep won't come. You lie there, aware of every degree, every bead of sweat, every minute that passes without unconsciousness arriving. This is a modern problem, you think. Air conditioning exists for exactly this reason. Before it, people must have simply suffered through it. But here is what that assumption gets wrong. The humans who lived in the Rift Valley of East Africa, in the Thar Desert, in the Sahara, at periods when it was even hotter than today, did not simply suffer. They solved it. Not with technology in the way we mean the word, with biology, with behavior, with a precise and sophisticated understanding of heat physics that they had encoded into daily life so thoroughly, it didn't look like engineering at all. It looked like living. The real question is what they knew about heat and sleep that we have since outsourced to a machine and what we lost when we did. The answer isn't one thing. There are layers here in the specific physics of nocturnal cooling, in the architecture of ancient sleep, in what the Hadza do on hot nights right now, and in what sleep research says about temperature and the brain. Each layer is more practical and more surprising than the last. Let's go. Start with what sleep actually needs from temperature. Core body temperature must drop by approximately 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius from its daytime peak for the brain to initiate and maintain deep, non-REM sleep. This is not a preference. It is a physiological requirement. The drop is triggered by heat dissipation from the skin surface. Vasodilation in the hands, feet, and face opens blood flow to the periphery, allowing heat to radiate outward. Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley, in sleep research published across multiple studies through the 2010s, describes body temperature regulation as one of the most underappreciated drivers of sleep architecture. When the ambient environment is too warm to absorb the heat the body is trying to shed, the cooling gradient fails. Core temperature stays elevated. Sleep onset is delayed, deep sleep stages are shortened, and REM architecture is disrupted. The body is not being dramatic when heat prevents sleep. It is running a thermoregulation sequence that has physical requirements, and those requirements are not being met. Ancient humans faced this problem every summer in every hot environment they inhabited, without exception. And the solutions they developed were not random. They were precisely targeted at the physics of the problem. Here's where it gets strange. The single most effective behavioral solution to sleeping in heat is also the oldest, the most universal, and the most consistently rediscovered across every hot climate culture ever studied: sleeping outside on elevated surfaces, away from heat-retaining ground. Mud, rock, and compressed earth absorb solar radiation during the day and re-emit it as infrared heat through the night for hours after sunset, a phenomenon called thermal mass discharge. A body lying on or near ground-level heat-retaining surfaces is bathed in radiant heat from below even when the air temperature has dropped. Ancient sleeping solutions across hot climates consistently elevated the sleeper away from the ground. Raised sleeping platforms documented in archaeological sites across sub-Saharan Africa, the elevated rope beds of ancient Egypt, the open rooftop sleeping documented in Mesopotamian texts from as early as 2000 BCE. These are not comfort choices. They are thermal engineering decisions. A body elevated 30 centimeters off the ground receives significantly less radiant heat from the Earth's thermal mass discharge than a body lying on the surface. The solution predates any understanding of infrared radiation. The people who developed it knew only that sleeping higher was cooler. The physics explained itself in the quality of the sleep that followed. Now, let's talk about what the Hadza actually do, because they are the living data point that ancient behavior studies cannot otherwise provide. Jerome Siegel at UCLA and colleagues conducted extended field research with the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer groups living in the same East African landscape that shaped human sleep biology, and published findings in Current Biology in 2015 and follow-up work through 2019. What they found about hot season sleep dismantles almost every assumption about ancient human rest. On hot nights, Hadza individuals do not attempt a single consolidated sleep block. They shift to what Siegel describes as a natural, biphasic, or polyphasic pattern, sleeping in the earlier part of the night when temperatures are highest and less conducive to deep sleep, entering lighter sleep stages, then achieving deeper, slow-wave sleep in the pre-dawn hours, when ambient temperature has dropped to its daily minimum. They also move, not randomly deliberately. Sleeping positions shift across the night to track the coolest available microenvironment. A spot that was optimal at 10 in the evening, slightly elevated and catching residual breeze, may be less optimal at 2 in the morning when the wind direction shifts. The Hadza track these microclimatic shifts and adjust. The sleeping body is not passive. It is continuously, semi-consciously managing its thermal relationship with the environment. This is not insomnia. It is sleep architecture adapted to real thermal conditions rather than the artificial uniformity of a climate-controlled room. Here's something else that almost never comes up: wet cooling. Every traditional culture in hot climates developed some version of passive evaporative cooling for sleeping, the physics of which are straightforward, but the applications are ingenious. Evaporation of water from a surface draws heat from that surface at approximately 2,430 joules per gram of water evaporated. A damp cloth on the forehead, a wetted sleeping mat, a water-soaked grass sleeping surface. All of these work through the same mechanism. They provide a continuously evaporating water surface adjacent to the skin that accelerates the body's natural heat dissipation, far beyond what dry air convection alone achieves. Ancient Egyptian texts and wall paintings document sleeping on wetted reed mats during summer. Archaeological evidence from Indus Valley sites at Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, analyzed by Jonathan Mark Knoyer at the University of Wisconsin, shows architectural features consistent with rooftop sleeping areas that could be wetted with water, with drainage channels that suggest deliberate water application to sleeping surfaces. In the Iranian plateau, a traditional sleeping structure called a bajir, a wind-catching tower that channels prevailing night breezes down into sleeping chambers, was documented by building surveyors as early as the 3rd millennium BCE, and remains in use in parts of Yazd province today. These are not primitive solutions. They are passive cooling architectures that exploit evaporation physics, convective airflow, and thermal mass with a sophistication that modern HVAC systems replicate at vastly higher energy cost. So here's the part nobody tells you. The human body itself is one of the most sophisticated cooling machines in the mammalian world. Humans are among the very few mammals with eccrine sweat glands distributed across the entire body surface, approximately 2 to 4 million of them, capable of producing up to 1.5 liters of sweat per hour under peak heat stress. Peter Wheeler, at Liverpool John Moores University, who spent decades analyzing the thermoregulation of early hominins, published work showing that this whole body sweating capacity, combined with the hair loss that exposed the skin's surface to evaporative airflow, evolved specifically for thermal management during high exertion activity in equatorial heat. The cooling system is extraordinary, and ancient humans, who understood heat from continuous daily experience in a way that air-conditioned modern humans do not, knew how to use it. They knew that sleeping with skin exposed to moving air accelerated evaporative cooling. They knew that drinking water before sleep maintained sweat capacity through the night. They knew that eating heavily before sleep raised core temperature through the thermic effect of digestion and made hot night sleep worse. They knew, without the vocabulary of thermodynamics, everything that thermodynamics would later explain about why they were right. There's one last thing I saved for the end. The modern sleep crisis and the heat crisis are not separate problems. Research by Nick Obradovich at MIT and colleagues, published in Science Advances in 2017, analyzed 765,000 sleep quality survey responses linked to local temperature data and found that each degree Celsius of nighttime warming above optimal sleeping temperature was associated with measurable, self-reported sleep disruption, with the effects largest in summer, in elderly populations, and in lower income groups without access to air conditioning. As global average nighttime temperatures increase with climate change, the populations least equipped to use technological cooling will face the most severe sleep disruption. And the solutions that ancient humans used, elevated sleeping surfaces, evaporative cooling, polyphasic sleep, adapted to nocturnal temperature curves, tracking of microclimatic variation across the night are precisely the low-energy, low-cost, high-effectiveness interventions that researchers studying heat-resilient sleep in resource-limited settings are now rediscovering and formally documenting. The ancient solutions were not superseded by air conditioning because they stopped working. They were set aside because a powered alternative arrived that was more convenient. The convenience came with an energy cost, an infrastructure dependency, and a global temperature consequence that the ancient solutions never carried. It is 2 in the morning and the air is not moving. The ground is re-emitting the day's heat. Your body is trying to cool itself, and the environment is not cooperating. Somewhere in a camp in Tanzania tonight, a Hadza individual shifts their sleeping position to catch the pre-dawn breeze that arrives from the northeast around 3 in the morning, a pattern they know from a lifetime of sleeping in this landscape, and that their parents knew and their parents' parents knew going back further than any written record. They will achieve their deepest slow-wave sleep in the hour before sunrise, when the air finally drops below the threshold their body needs. They will wake rested. The solution is not a machine, it is knowledge. It is the accumulated understanding of a body in conversation with a specific thermal environment built over thousands of years of sleeping in the open. That knowledge is still available. The body still knows how to use it. What it needs is for us to stop pretending the machine made it obsolete.